It's UofL Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
Welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. So glad you're joining us today. And as I often say on this program, at the start of this program, you'll learn something in the next 30 minutes that you didn't know before, and it'll be about the University of Louisville. So you can brag on the University of Louisville a little bit to all your pals and say, gee, did you know about these neat things going on at the University of Louisville? Well, at the next 30 minutes, we're going to tell you about some of the neat things going on at the University of Louisville. This is the All-British Accent Show. Two UofL faculty members who hail from other countries will be joining us today. One of them is Riann VanZyl, who is from South Africa, and we'll be talking about his research and work in South Africa and other parts of the world on HIV and the AIDS epidemic. Also, later in this show, we'll be telling you about a unique relationship between the UofL College of Business and students at Portland Elementary School down in West Louisville. But first, the other guy with the British accent is John Trent, who's originally from New Zealand but is now in Louisville doing cancer research. He's one of UofL's Bucks for Brains professors, and he holds a slew of titles, including Professor in UofL School of Medicine, Wendell Cherry Endowed Chair in Cancer Translational Research, Director of COSARE Charities Pediatric Oncology Research Program, and Director of the James Graham Brown Cancer Center Molecular Modeling Facility. Did I get them all, John?
Yeah, you did.
Well, welcome to the show, John Trent. You and I have known each other for a little while, and you do some great work down at the University of Louisville Research Labs downtown. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
So our focus is really translational research and drug discovery. So that really means getting drugs into patients. So we have a team, we have many teams, but we have a team of investigators who try and just search for new molecular targets, mainly in cancer, because we're in the cancer center. And they bring those targets to me, and we find small molecules to try and develop into drugs that will eventually get into patients.
And how do you do that? How do you find these targets that you're talking about?
So the targets, the investigators find the targets by pretty much molecular biology and following pathways. And in the cancer, it's usually a pathway that is not functioning properly. It's either upregulated or downregulated, so it's operating too fast or too slow. And then they identify a critical component of that causes that, and then they bring that to me, and I try and kill it.
Yeah, you try and kill it. So you're trying to kill cancer, basically.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out a way to kill cancer.
Yeah. We just stop the function of these targets, yeah.
How many different targets or processes are you and your team working on right now?
Right, so over the last 5 years, we've worked on we've successfully targeted over 40 different molecular targets in cancer and other diseases. So currently my lab is working on 3, but within the cancer center there's numerous new ones being developed. So we have found new drugs to 40 different targets in the last 5 years.
And the 3 that you're working on, what are they?
One is anti-metastatic.
Which is
target.
what?
So in cancer, the final stage of cancer is, in the worst cases, it spreads to the rest of your body. So it metastasizes. Okay, and there are no drugs FDA approved for metastatic cancer. So we've found a molecule that's actually been hijacked already for HIV that you can target for finding new anti-metastatic drugs. So basically, if you find a small molecule that stops that normal function of that protein, you stop the spread of cancer. And we have data in animal models that show that it's effective, and we're just moving that one forward.
Okay, what about the other 2?
The other 2... one of them is actually the target that we found a drug for that got into the clinic. It was a collaboration with Paula Bates and Don Miller and myself, and we found this little piece of DNA called AS1411 that folds up into a particular stable structure that the body doesn't destroy, because the body normally destroys little bits of DNA floating around because you don't really want to change your genome.
Yeah,
when we're so close to other species. So what Paula did was identify the actual target to that, which is a protein called nucleolin, and it's on the surface of tumor cells and not cancer cells. So for whatever reason, the protein's in the wrong place in cancer cells. And what we can do is develop small molecules to directly target that, and that's what we're doing with that target.
Okay, and then you got a third one.
The third one is a little bit off the wall, and like a lot of the targets that we deal with in the cancer center, we're not afraid to think outside the box. And this one is actually targeting DNA in your genome that folds up into 4-stranded DNA. So the days of thinking of DNA as just your normal double helix that's been over since 1992. We know that DNA can fold into 3 strands and 4 strands, and this quadruplex, because it's 4-stranded, is predominant at the human telomere at the end of your chromosomes, and it spontaneously folds up into these quadruplexes. Now, cancer cells have a mechanism called telomerase that extends your chromosomes, so they never know when to die, basically. The cells never know when to die. So in normal cells, most normal somatic cells die. So every time they divide, these chromosomes get shorter.
They have a lifetime.
They have a lifetime, yeah. It's a clock. It's basically a clock. But in cancer cells, the clock's forever getting wound forward. So they don't know when to die. You got to figure out
a way to put them, to kill them and give them a time certain to get out of here.
Yeah. So what you do is you stabilize this little structure at the end of the telomere, and the telomerase, or the thing that extends the telomere, can't function on it. So therefore, you turn the immortal cancer cells into mortal cells that know when to die.
All right. We're talking with John Trent, who's with the Brown Cancer Center at the University of Louisville and also with the UofL School of Medicine. He's working on cancer drugs, or trying to work on cancer drugs. What success have you had in coming up with different drugs that target specific kinds of cancer? Or how far are we, maybe the better question is, how far away are you on finding a drug that will specifically target pancreatic cancer or whatever?
Well, we've already got 2 drugs that have got to the clinic.
Okay.
So the first one was this piece of DNA, AS4111, that made it to phase 2 clinical trials in acute myeloid leukemia and kidney cancer. And the second drug was the drug that I think Jason Chesney has previously talked about. We found that drug for Jason that works in the glycolytic pathway, or the energy pathway that tumours need to survive, and that's currently in clinical trials. So we have already got 2 drugs in clinical trials, but at any one time we're working on a dozen more.
Okay. What's the difference between cloud computing and the DataSeam grid? What's that? I guess we ought to talk about DataSeam first and tell folks what DataSeam is. I've had Brian Gupton on the show to talk about his company DataSeam and how they work with you, but why don't you, in a nutshell, describe what DataSeam is and how it works with cancer research? Okay,
so DataSeam, the company, we first started a relationship with them in 2003 just by a chance meeting, really. It was just, they had identified that there was a massive amount of computing power in the K through 12 school districts in Kentucky that was just sitting there, not being used. And we do a lot of our drug discovery using computers initially, and we needed more capacity that was in the state of Kentucky at the time. So we started working with them, and what they do is they basically string together computers that are already sitting in the K through 12 school districts, and it's called a grid. And we run research on that grid. Now, in essence, cloud computing is a really trendy term now, but it really just means remote computing, because you put it into the cloud and you don't see it. Well, it has to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it goes to the K through 12 school districts. So it all started in 2003, where we had 3 computers. Me and the CEO of DataSeam were trying to get these 3 computers to talk together, and now we've got 25,000.
So these 25,000 computers that are sitting on the desk of kids out in Kentucky school districts, those are all, the computing power of those computers are being used to help you target cancer, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So what we have is each of these, we call them runs. So you have a target, you run them against 25 million compounds to see if you can find a drug. And that takes about 300 years. If you did it on your laptop, it'd take 300 years, which is a long time.
Really?
Yeah. Graduate students hate it. But if you do it on 25,000 computers, you can screen 25 million compounds in 4 days. And what we're doing is we're actually using those computers in the coal districts 24/7 in the background, and they are churning away, and they are doing drug discovery continuously.
I know you're working on some pediatric cancer drugs as well. What's in the pipeline? What hope is there for kids that have cancer 10 years from now?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're trying to find more selective agents, because the cure rate in a lot of pediatric cancers is high, but it comes at a penalty. And the penalty is increased heart attacks or cardiac issues, and in some cases IQ points. So we need much more selective drugs. And what we've been doing is researching this drug we already have in adults, AS1411, in neuroblastoma. And it turns out that it is very effective in aggressive neuroblastoma, which is the treatment is sorely needed for that.
Okay. So there is progress.
Yeah, there is progress. Yeah.
Okay.
We continue to work on it. Yeah.
All right. What would you say about the overall cancer research program at the University of Louisville? Kind of as you leave the program here, what would you tell folks about the work that you're doing in general and the work others are doing at the Brown Cancer Center and U of L?
I think it's one of the best kept secrets around here, actually, and around the nation. Like, we're producing more drugs than almost any other centre in the translational area, and there's some brilliant people there that I get to work with. And we are making a difference. We're getting drugs into patients that were developed here. And that means that the Commonwealth have access to drugs that no one else has.
Which is cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
All right. John, Trent, thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Sitting in front of me right now is Riann VanZyl. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, that's
Riann
correct.
VanZyl, correct?
Yes.
All right. He's a native of South Africa who's now a professor in the Kent School of Social Work at the University of Louisville. He's been doing lots of research on HIV, especially in his home country. So let's talk about that a little bit. You're with the Kent School of Social Work, but you're doing some work on HIV. So explain what brought you to that.
What brought me to that is, of course, the HIV epidemic. And fortunately, we made some progress globally in terms of reducing infections by 35% globally. So that is really good news. We've also extended our outreach for antiretroviral treatment and access quite remarkably since 2008 by 84%. So that's all good news. But the unfortunate situation is that there's still high numbers of people living with HIV without access to antiretroviral treatment, or people living without knowing the status and who are in fact HIV positive. And so if we want to make really an impact in terms of the HIV epidemic, we need to reach those people. And in South Africa, why I focus on that is that it's still the country with proportionally most people living with HIV. And
Wait a minute. In South Africa,
in
they
South
have
Africa,
the largest percentage of people living with HIV? Really?
per capita, yes.
I did not know that.
You have 6.3 million people out of the 36 million people living with HIV.
So 1 out of every 6 South Africans?
Are in South Africa. So that is really a huge
Really?
percentage.
Okay.
And
That's huge.
the incidence rate, in fact, is 19% of people in South Africa are positive for HIV.
Okay, so you've been doing some research. What's been your research then in South Africa that you've been working on?
I focus on how to get people tested, and particularly young people.
Get them to a clinic, in other words? Or?
Well, that is the problematic, because the clinics are not really set up to be friendly for young people to come and visit. The lines are very long. They have to take a taxi, and it's difficult, the transport-wise, to get to the clinics. And the clinic is not the best environment to get tested. So very low percentage of people were, first of all, tested for HIV. And that made a huge difference. So we started to say, well, we need to be innovative. And we began with a mobile voluntary counseling and testing sites that we move around from shopping centers and other public places. And that was hugely successful. But then we had to create a way to invite people to come in for testing, give them the information in a format that was attracting to them. Because people were complaining, well, all we know about HIV and they tell us at school, but it's all very boring. And
Yeah. So how do you get kids to show up, basically, at these shopping centers, these remote locations that may be near them, but how do you actually get them out of their house or their school to come to the clinic or to come to your
Well, we do the testing right there on site.
Right.
So that was the whole purpose of that. And then we invested in, and people at Hollywood and other people, celebrities helped us to produce the video that was really very informative. And we could use local South African celebrities to talk about their experiences and give them the information. The whole video took about 10 to 12 minutes. And we found that at this stage, we have been really successful. People who have seen the video, who then follow up to take up the testing, is at the moment about 99% of people. So we're very good at recruiting people to come in for testing.
That's good advertising and marketing right there. Maybe you should come work in the communications and marketing department at the University of Louisville. That's pretty good. All right, we're talking to Riann VanZyl. He is in the Kent School of Social Work at the University of Louisville. We're talking about HIV programming and testing and outreach in South Africa. Are there other folks at the University of Louisville that are helping you with this project?
Well, with this project, I try to use our doctoral students who are interested in this field and want to specialize in this area to also help. And one of the students, Lauren Brown, is at the moment doing her dissertation study in South Africa. We've just completed the study, doing the analysis right now. And she focused on, once we've tested people and they know their status, for those people who are HIV positive, how to better link them to care. And we've started, for example, and that was part of the innovation, started with a call center that's doing outgoing calls. In other words, following up with people who are HIV positive and say, how can we help you to get to the clinic and to get medical care and etc. And she focused on one of the subgroups of those people, and that is women who have been exposed to intimate partner violence, because they have an additional risk. If they tell that I'm HIV positive, how will their partner respond? And so we've been doing research, and she did great work collecting a lot of information, etc., from these women to help us to design strategies to better help them to link to care.
So you've obviously figured out a way to proactively get folks to get tested for HIV in South Africa that works. What's going to happen now? Can you take that model to other countries that have high populations of folks who have not been tested for HIV?
We certainly are, and I'm working with teams of other places in the country who are active in other places in the world to replicate that model. But we also have additional challenges because of those people who are initially tested and are HIV positive. Only less than 15% of those remain in care and receive the level of treatment that they need to survive and to be healthy. So we have a long way to go. We need to do better in terms of this. People talk about the cascade of care, because at each point, in each stage of the care, there's a drop-off of people that we do not reach. So we are still actively researching better ways to not only identify those who are HIV positive, give them counseling and tell them how to do, how not to be contagious, and etc., and how to receive the treatment, but then also how to remain in treatment. That's a huge focus of future research.
This may not be a question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How does the city of Louisville and the United States in general do as far as getting folks tested that have a high probability of having HIV?
I think they're doing very well. I think they are, the city of Louisville and also in Kentucky and wider areas, they're really doing very well in terms of the reach out to people. And at different places in the country, there are almost surveillance systems in place to track and help people to do that. I think that, of course, there's also always room for improvement, and I'm talking to people here who are service providers, etc., and see, are there strategies that we're using elsewhere that can also be effective in this area?
And lastly, you've been at the University of Louisville for how many years? 15 years?
For 15 years.
15 years. How has UofL really helped you foster your research? Has it been a good place to be able to that said, hey, go do what you want to do, kind of thing?
Well, UofL has been really wonderful. I'm the Associate Dean for Research, so I focus a lot of the research that other people are doing. But fortunately, I also find some time to do my own area of research, and And it's been really wonderful in providing opportunities to do so, collaborating, building networks, providing infrastructure that we can use. So the University of Louisville has been a great place to do this research. Unfortunately, I have colleagues in our own school who also focus on HIV research and in America, and we can talk and we can share
information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Riann, VanZyl, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about your prison population research. We will save that for another time. I'll have you back on the program. We'll talk about that. How's that sound?
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Thanks for being
very
on.
Wonderful.
All right. Appreciate it. Beth Davis is a professor in the College of Business, and we're not going to talk too much about what she does in the classroom today. We're going to actually talk about her starting a unique relationship with a local elementary school. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, tell us about what got started with Portland Elementary School.
Well, the College of Business, and particularly the Diversity Committee in the College of Business, championed and organized this new initiative that we're calling Elevate Portland Elementary.
Okay. So what's Elevate Portland Elementary?
Well, so let me give you a little background on how this came to be.
All right.
In the college, the Diversity Committee is charged with monitoring the climate, the attitudinal climate of the college. And so we started talking about it one day, and we said, instead of just monitoring the climate, why don't we try to impact the climate? And when we think about doing that, what is something that everybody in the college can rally around? Because the one thing that's true about not just the College of Business, but probably any academic unit, people in universities have a heart for service. So, and it's one of the pillars of the scholarship model. So we said, let's think about what we can do, a college-wide service project that's really going to help the community, but also just make everybody in the college feel good. And so we went to the community engagement office and talked to Henry Cunningham. And we were actually starting to think really small. We said, let's just do something small to start. And we had a food pantry idea. So we were like, well, let's do something that's going to be easy for everybody to wrap their heads around, something small, get our toe in the water. So Henry then led us to Portland Elementary. And we had the conversation with the principal. And I will just tell you that after speaking to her and learning more about the situation that these kids are in that community, it was really clear that a food pantry was not nearly enough. So we came back and said, we really need to help this school and these kids, and we have the resources to do it. And that is where it really started. Going to the source and hearing more about the situation and the problems there. And collaboratively, what we decided was that these kids have so many needs, but in terms of what the College of Business can do and the needs that they can address, two things. These kids have very basic needs. Food, clothing, shelter are needs that these kids have. They come to school in the winter, we learned, not dressed appropriately for winter. They're cold. Oftentimes these kids, the only meals these kids eat are what they get at school. So she was telling us about how they struggle with things like socks all the time.
Right.
So that was one of the things that we said. And then the other thing that we learned is that these kids don't get a lot of encouragement at home to be successful in terms of completing their education.
To excel in school.
To excel in school. That's absolutely right. So we said, you know what, we can help them form some aspirational goals that will allow them to, and they need to see they don't know what it looks like. That was stunning for people in academia. They don't know what educational success or a job looks like. So we said, let's try to make that tangible for them.
All right, we're talking with Beth Davis from the College of Business at the University of Louisville. We're talking about the relationship with Portland Elementary School. So tell us about some of the things that the College of Business has put together. Just give us, have to give us the whole laundry list, but just a few things, and how that fits in with the University of Louisville's signature partnership, which is I guess, an engagement with a number of West End schools.
Sure. So that's what led us to Portland. Portland is one of the signature partnership schools that has been set up through the university. So it was important for us to plug in to the university and also help us complete our goals, but also align ourselves with the broader university goals. So that's where Portland came in. The first thing that we did was an internal fundraising drive inside of the college for faculty and staff because, again, it goes back to those basic needs. They're cold during the day. The school is kind of drafty, and they are not wearing clothes adequate to keep them warm during the day. And then they also need that aspirational goal. So we raised enough money to buy every child in the school a sweatshirt, and we put their school logo on it. And then we also used a Disney quote that said, "If you can dream it, you can do it." And on the back of the sweatshirt, every grade, every child in every grade has their high school graduation date printed on the back. So we went to the school, we handed out the sweatshirts, we had a big party, and I'll just tell you that seeing 350 dancing purple children is absolutely heartwarming.
All right.
So that was kind of the launch, and it was incredibly successful.
So we've got about 2 minutes left. Why don't you go through real quickly some of the other things that the College of Business has done and maybe talk about what you've got coming up.
Absolutely. So we also did a socks, hats, and mittens drive at the end of the year. We did a snack food drive just recently to try to get them snacks. They try to give them something at the end of the day. They call it brain fuel. So the kids will at least have something to eat before they go home. We collected snacks for that. We also we raised enough funds to get the 5th grade class Samsung Galaxy tablets to use in their classrooms, which was really neat to be able to go and present that to them. Upcoming, a couple things. We are working with a leadership class led by Christy Burge, and they are going to bring the 5th graders here to campus, and they're going to walk them through. They're going to do little classrooms, little classes, mini 10-minute classes with them, and they're going to take them to the Grillville for lunch, the Ville Grill for lunch. And so what we're trying to do, I'm also meeting with the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity next week. They're interested in maybe doing a program, a Big Brother program. So ultimately, here's what we're trying to do. There are a whole lot of student groups, organizations on campus, and a lot of kids that need these groups that require service hours. We have a group of kids at a school who need a lot of help. Mm-hmm. So we ultimately would like to kind of be that conduit, that portal.
Match them
up, and because that's what these kids need. They need consistency, and the more that they can interact with our students, the more that we can get them here and consistently let them see that there is a path for them. There's a path to a better life. That's what we want to try to do for these kids.
And I know the College of Business faculty and staff members have really rallied around this project and have done great work down there. So,
absolutely.
So that's terrific.
It's been a joy.
Well, Beth Davis, thanks for leading that. We thank all of you for listening to the program, and go Cards.